Right now, police are investigating after they say 2 women lured another to her death.
Homicide detectives were notified from the local hospital that a woman had showed up with serious injuries.
She looks really messed up, so right away he just makes a decision to rush her to the hospital.
And she actually passed away from...
Bro, stop playing with me,
No,
please.
seriously.
Please stop playing with me.
Sure.
Please stop playing with me.
Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down.
Please stop playing with me.
Shh, breathe.
All right, so before we dive in, I just want to say something real quick. If you've been watching this channel for a while, this is actually the first time you're hearing my real voice. Up until now, I was using AI voiceovers for every single video. It helped me get started, and honestly, it saved a lot of time. But lately, I've been thinking, and I realized I can't keep hiding behind that. So from now on, I'm doing everything myself, the writing, the voice, all of it, and spoiler, damn, it's hard as fuck. Like, I'm still figuring things out, and yeah, it's rough sometimes. But I feel like this is the only way to really bring this channel to life again with something honest, something that actually sounds like me. I'm using Adobe Enhanced Speech to clean up the audio a little, so if it sounds a bit too crisp or weird sometimes, that's why. Yep, this is 100% me talking to you right now. And whether you've been here before, or you just randomly found this channel, thank you. Drop a comment. Let me know what city you're watching from and what time it is over there. Yeah, I deadass love reading that kind of stuff, for real. And if you're up for it, smash that subscribe button. It actually helps a lot. All right, let's get into the case. Ashley Baccanegra, you know, a 30-year-old young woman, was pretty used to living on night shifts, balancing that with caring for her son. That morning, she received a message from a colleague who wanted to meet with her. At first glance, it was just an ordinary request, nothing special. I mean, Ashley had many such meetings. She had no idea that this invitation would lead to a series of events that would completely turn her life upside down. Calmly walking along the familiar path to the meeting place, Ashley couldn't imagine that behind the bushes were already those who had orchestrated all of this. Everything seemed routine, the courtyard, the brief connection, the familiar route, but each of her steps was approaching the moment that would change everything. An ordinary meeting turned into a deadly trap, and her trust transformed into betrayal. Ashley was born on November 18th, 1991, in the Bronx, one of New York's boroughs. Her upbringing was handled by her mother, named Jessica, and she had an older sister. Honestly, little is known about Ashley's father. It's unclear whether he participated in her life. The family lived modestly, but they always had everything they needed. From her youth, Ashley was sociable, active, took care of herself, and loved makeup. She was always attracted to experimenting with her appearance, and this made her noticeable among her peers. After school, she didn't immediately decide what she wanted to do, and began working in retail, simultaneously contemplating her future, but having no concrete goals. During this time, she met Julian, a young man with whom she soon began a serious relationship. They spent a lot of time together, and after some time, Ashley learned that she was expecting a child. The pregnancy wasn't in their plans, but they decided to keep the child and started living together. In 2014, Ashley gave birth to their son. You know, his name's never been made public. The parents decided to keep that part of their life private, but the birth changed a lot for them. Ashley threw herself into motherhood completely, and Julian, even though he was still pretty young himself, stepped up and took an active role in raising their child. Around that time, things in New York were getting tougher. Rent kept going up, day-to-day expenses were rising, and it just got harder to make ends meet. By the beginning of 2015, they made a decision they were going to leave the city. They picked Atlanta, down in Georgia. For them, the move was like hitting reset. They ended up finding an apartment in a complex that had security and video surveillance, and that gave them this sense of safety, a little bit of hope that things could start fresh. Even though their relationship eventually came to an end, they chose to keep living together for their son's sake. They had a mutual agreement they wouldn't get involved in each other's personal lives until their son was older. Ashley handled most of the responsibilities at home and started looking for a steady job. Not long after, she landed one at a home goods store. They offered her night shifts, which actually worked out because it meant she could stay home with her son during the day, then work at night. It wasn't easy, not at all, but the schedule gave her a chance to start improving her financial situation. She wanted stability, independence. And at the same time, she wanted to keep a peaceful environment at home for her child. Over time, she adjusted to the night shift. The team she worked with stayed pretty consistent, which helped her settle in. People got to know each other, and it was in that environment that she met Daniel Gonzalez. He worked there too, and he usually had the same shifts as Ashley. At first, their conversations were all work-related. Daniel was the kind of guy who pitched in, took on tough tasks, never backed away from the workload. He came off as calm, kind, respectful. Ashley never felt anything weird from him. No pressure, no pushiness. He was just around, ready to help when needed. Little by little, they started to talk more. It began with small chats during breaks, and then those talks started to go a bit deeper. Still, nothing about it felt forced. Ashley felt comfortable around him. He didn't dig into her personal life, but he asked how her day was going, offered help without making a big deal of it, just quietly being there. That kind of attentiveness made him stand out. Eventually, they started talking outside of work, too. They traded numbers, texted now and then. At first, it was just short messages, little updates, casual stuff, maybe a plan to meet before their shift. Nothing flirty or romantic, just low-key communication. Back then, Ashley didn't know anything about Daniel's life outside of work. He never brought it up, and none of the other coworkers mentioned it either. Nobody said he had a partner or kids. He didn't talk about who he lived with, didn't hint at any drama. To her, he seemed like a chill, grounded guy with nothing to hide. Later on, she found out almost by accident that they actually lived in the same complex. It came up when they were talking about where their apartments were. Turned out they were both in the same secured area. That made it even easier to stay in touch. Now, they ran into each other not just at night on the job, but during the day around the complex. To Ashley, this all just felt like convenient support from someone she trusted. A reliable coworker, living nearby. It was comfortable. It made life a little easier. And at the time, she had no clue that he had a family of his own. Daniel was 27. He wasn't legally married, but he'd been in a long-term relationship with a woman named Antoinette Stevens. She was the same age. They had known each other since they were kids, and their families were still close. So they started dating when they were teenagers. And by the time all this happened, they'd been living together for over 10 years. They had 2 sons, one was 9, the other 6. On the outside, it probably looked like they had a stable family life, but honestly, things inside the house were way more complicated. The relationship between Daniel and Antoinette had gotten pretty tense. Most of the time, they were arguing about daily stuff, chores, bills, just regular life things, but the fights didn't always stay that simple. And I mean, from what people around them said, Antoinette wasn't exactly easy to live with. She could go off over the smallest things like real quick, and she didn't really care who was around when it happened. That kind of thing didn't just wear on Daniel. Other folks started to notice too. But Daniel, he didn't talk about any of this at work. He kept it to himself. Like, unless you were super close to him, you wouldn't have a clue what was going on. Still, the tension with Antoinette was building up, and it started to affect everything at home. Their whole relationship kind of turned into just handling the basics, raising the kids, paying rent, dividing up chores. From the outside, they looked like they were still together, but emotionally, they were already drifting apart. And then Janine moved in, Daniel's younger sister. She was 17, and yeah, she needed a change. She dropped out of school, didn't know what she wanted to do next. The family thought maybe if she stayed with Daniel and Antoinette, she'd get her head on straight, maybe figure something out, find a job or whatever. Janine and Antoinette clicked right away. They'd known each other forever. They were basically like sisters already. Daniel, though he wasn't all that close with Janine, she mostly hung out with Antoinette and the kids. But Janine being there, it didn't help anything. If anything, it made stuff worse. She started seeing the fights, and before long, she was jumping in too. And yeah, she took Antoinette's side every time. People who knew them said she didn't even try to hide it. In her mind, Daniel was the one messing everything up. Over time, that kind of turned into a whole us versus him thing in the house. So by the time Daniel started talking more with Ashley, he was already feeling shut out in his own home. His partner was always on edge. The kids needed constant attention, and even his sister was siding against him. It's no wonder he started spending more time at work, lingering during breaks, staying late, just trying to avoid going home. And look, it's not like he was planning to change anything, not yet. But the way things were going, yeah, it was pushing him. Slowly, but steadily. A few weeks after he and Ashley started talking at the store, they began hanging out outside of work, too. Not in any big dramatic way, just gradually. A little more often each time. So, their conversations weren't just about work anymore. They started talking about real life stuff, being tired all the time, what it's like juggling a household, raising kids. Ashley would tell Daniel about her son, about how she was still living with Julian, and how she was thinking about getting her own place soon. Daniel listened, like really listened. He didn't interrupt, he just kind of leaned in and pointed out how similar their situations were. But here's the thing, he never once brought up his own family. Didn't say a word about Antoinette or the kids, never mentioned who he was living with, didn't hint at any problems either. Meanwhile, things between him and Ashley just kept moving forward slowly but steadily. They started meeting up before work, sometimes just chatting by the entrance. Then he started staying over at her place a little longer. He'd show up in the evening, help with dinner, stick around while her kid watched television. And yeah, all of this happened naturally. No big leap. No red flags. Ashley didn't push for details, and Daniel didn't feel the need to offer any. Julian wasn't involved, and none of Ashley's coworkers said anything. From her point of view, she was just living her life doing what felt right, and honestly, on the surface, it all looked pretty harmless. But back at Daniel's place, things were starting to shift. Janine, who was home most of the time, started noticing some patterns. Daniel was heading out more, not really saying where he was going, and he'd come back late. She didn't know what he was doing exactly, but she kept track of it, and she told Antoinette. At first, Antoinette didn't react much, but over time, her concerns started to grow. Then Janine began noticing Daniel hanging around in the parking lot, always with the same girl. She didn't know yet that it was Ashley, but the face stuck with her. She'd watch them talking. They weren't hugging or anything like that, nothing obvious, but they looked close. Janine didn't say anything right away, but she started paying way more attention. For Ashley, it was all just part of the routine, but inside Daniel's apartment, tension was starting to boil over. Antoinette wasn't just asking questions anymore. She started checking his phone, watching how he acted. From that point on, whatever trust they still had, it started breaking down. Then, in the summer of 2022, Daniel and Antoinette took a trip to Florida with the kids and Janine. Antoinette's mom was getting married. The idea was that they'd take a little road trip, spend about a week down there, visit with family, and just relax. But honestly, the trip didn't go how anyone hoped. From day one, there was tension. They started arguing on the drive, over the schedule, over who was tired, over nothing really. And once they got there, it didn't stop. It felt like they were fighting every day, over little things. And Antoinette's family started to notice it too. You could just feel the friction. Then one night, after the wedding, most folks had gone to bed already. Daniel was outside in the yard, talking to Janine. He'd had a few drinks. He told her straight up that he was done with Antoinette, that he didn't see a future with her anymore, and then he let it slip that there was someone else. He didn't say a name, but he said it was a coworker. That was enough. Janine didn't say much in that moment, she just listened. But right after that, she told Antoinette everything, said Daniel had admitted he was seeing someone else. Antoinette's reaction? Weirdly calm, no big outburst. Instead, she told Janine they'd figure out who this other woman was. She didn't want to rush it, she wanted confirmation. So, they agreed to keep an eye on him, quietly, and wait until they got back to Atlanta. After that, Antoinette kept things cool on the surface. She didn't bring it up with Daniel, didn't pick fights, but underneath that calm, she was planning. She wanted to know who this woman was. Once they got home, the energy in the apartment changed. It was heavy, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Antoinette and Janine didn't confront Daniel. They just watched him. No more direct questions, just constant observation. Where he went, who he talked to, how he acted. And Daniel? He had no idea how closely they were watching. So, since Antoinette and Janine didn't work, they spent most of their time at home. That gave them plenty of chances to keep tabs on Daniel, like Janine would remember exactly when he left the house, who he ran into near the entrance, and how he looked when he got back. They even checked his phone whenever he left it unlocked. A few days after they got back, Janine told Antoinette she'd seen Daniel with a girl right after his shift. They were standing close, talking, and smoking. Now, it didn't really look romantic or anything, no hugging or anything obvious, but there was this ease between them, like they were comfortable with each other. Janine remembered what the girl looked like. When Antoinette heard the description, she immediately thought it had to be Ashley, the neighbor she sometimes saw with a kid playing in the yard. After that, Antoinette and Janine decided to get more proactive. Antoinette suggested they use Daniel's phone while he was asleep to message Ashley, like pretending to be him. Janine was on board. They figured that way they could set up a meeting with Ashley and handle things face to face. So, early in the morning, Daniel got back from his night shift and went straight to bed, like usual. After a quick chat with Antoinette, he headed to the bedroom. Once he was out cold, Antoinette grabbed his phone and, with Janine, started going through his messages. It didn't take long. They found some pretty personal stuff in his text, with Ashley hints about meeting up, and some pretty blunt messages that made it clear they had more than just a casual relationship. That was all they needed to move to step 2. Antoinette sent a message to Ashley from Daniel's phone saying that he and Antoinette had gotten into a fight and he'd been kicked out of the house. So, he wanted to meet up. Ashley replied right away, asking where he was and if she could come find him. Their chat sounded like two people close to each other. Ashley had no idea she wasn't actually texting Daniel. Antoinette kept it calm in her replies, didn't say anything harsh or suspicious, just enough to keep Ashley's guard down. After a few messages, she suggested meeting in a small green space between the buildings in their complex. Ashley agreed. Once the meeting was set, Antoinette and Janine got ready. They took Janine's phone to record everything on video. The plan was to lure Ashley out, catch her off guard, and confront her, but really, the main goal wasn't talking it out. They wanted to use force. They picked that spot because it was quiet, not near the main entrances, and the security cameras didn't cover the whole area. So they thought they could get away with it without anyone seeing, even though it was still inside the complex. Meanwhile, Daniel was asleep, completely unaware that his phone was being used to set this whole thing in motion, something that would lead to serious consequences. Early that morning, Antoinette and Janine slipped out, leaving Daniel and the kids at home. They hid behind some bushes near the pedestrian path, partly in the shadows, a little away from the entrances. It wasn't perfectly hidden, so someone walking by might notice them if they looked closely. They waited. When a message came from Ashley saying she was outside, Antoinette told Janine to keep recording. A few minutes later, Ashley appeared. She walked in calm, like nothing was wrong. She was scanning around looking for Daniel. That's when Antoinette and Janine stepped out from behind the bushes. Antoinette called out loud to Ashley, saying she hadn't been texting Daniel at all. Then, without waiting for any kind of response, she hit her. Ashley didn't stand a chance. She tried to cover her face, begged them to stop, but the blows just kept coming.
She's walking by the park. Hold the phone down.
By the what?
All right, bro. Where are we going? Look at her right there, right there. Oh, guess what? That was me. You know me.
Antoinette knocked her down, threw her onto the asphalt, and started hitting her with punches and kicks. At one point, she grabbed Ashley by the hair and slammed her head against the ground. Janine, meanwhile, was filming everything. She didn't step in, but she was egging Antoinette on telling her to hit harder, move faster. At one point, Janine even got close enough to zoom in on Ashley's face. Ashley begged them to stop, crying, but Antoinette didn't back down. She kept accusing Ashley and threatening her, saying it was all at Daniel's request. At one point, she even looked right at the camera and told Janine to keep filming. Cars drove by, but no one stopped. Well, one car slowed down for a moment, but then just kept going. Finally, Antoinette told Janine to hit Ashley too. Janine stepped forward and kicked her a few times. After that, they left, taking Ashley's phone with them and still filming as they walked away. Ashley stayed lying there on the asphalt. Her face and limbs were covered with scratches and bruises. She was awake, but couldn't get up for a long time. Then, slowly, she got to her feet and started walking home, swaying, holding her stomach and chest. The cameras in the complex caught it all, how she struggled back. She walked like she was in pain, her face all bruised up, breathing heavy. When she got home, she went out onto the balcony and stood there for a while, leaning on the railing. At that moment, Julian was coming back from his morning jog. When he walked into the apartment, he immediately saw how bad Ashley looked. Her clothes were dirty, stained with blood. He started asking what had happened. Ashley didn't want to get into the details. She just said she'd been beaten by 2 women. She didn't know. She didn't say who or why. Maybe she was scared, or maybe she was still in shock. Julian could tell right away this was serious. He helped her sit down, offered her some water, but she just got worse. Breathing was hard for her. She complained of pain in her side and her head. Any movement made the pain sharp. After a few minutes, Julian took her to the nearest hospital. In the emergency room, doctors examined her and decided she needed to be moved to intensive care. They said her condition was really serious. Ashley had a bunch of bruises, broken ribs, and they suspected internal injuries. She'd also suffered a head injury. A few hours after the attack, the police showed up at the residential complex. Someone driving by had called them after seeing the fight.
Because we're notified from local hospital that a woman had showed up with serious injuries.
Officers went to the apartment where Antoinette, Daniel, the kids, and Janine lived. Daniel wasn't there at the time. Antoinette answered the door. She talked to the police calmly, didn't seem worried at all. She told them that a girl had come over that morning, started causing a scene, and attacked them.
She described that the female on the bottom was being attacked and fought, and she saw bleeding coming from her forehead.
Hey, I'm Detective Carter with Gwinnett County Police. Are you your internet?
Yes, hi.
Hey, this is Detective Poppy or Sergeant Poppy.
Hi, nice to meet you.
We know that there was like an incident that happened earlier today. Has anyone called you about it since?
No.
Antoinette said she didn't know the girl, that the girl had provoked the whole thing. At that point, the police didn't have any reason to make an arrest. Ashley hadn't made any statements yet, and they didn't know who the victim was. Antoinette gave them a story that sounded plausible even though it wasn't true. Doctors who treated Ashley had already told police about how serious her injuries were, but the police hadn't connected that info to the fight near Antoinette's place yet. So, the officers left without filing a report or collecting evidence. They only took verbal statements. That slip-up meant the evidence stayed untouched. At that moment, Antoinette and Janine didn't know they'd soon become suspects in a criminal case. Meanwhile, Ashley's condition kept getting worse. The hospital didn't have the right facilities for emergency brain or abdominal surgery, so the doctors decided to transfer her urgently. She was flown by helicopter to a specialized clinic in another part of the state. So, when Ashley got to that hospital, there was already a team of doctors, intensivists, and surgeons waiting for her. Right after she arrived, they rushed her into the operating room. The doctors tried to stop the internal bleeding and get her blood pressure under control, but the damage was just too bad. Her liver was partially ruptured, and there was massive bleeding in her abdomen. During the surgery, it became clear that her injuries weren't compatible with life. About an hour after she was admitted, despite everything the doctors did, Ashley's heart stopped. They worked on bringing her back for like 30 minutes, but it didn't work. At the same time, the police got a report from the hospital that a patient had been admitted showing signs of a violent attack. This info had actually been sent during her transport, but, well, due to poor coordination, it wasn't immediately linked to that earlier call from the residential complex. Ashley's death changed the whole legal situation. The hospital officially told the police she had died. Her info matched what was in the medical records and the complex's resident database. So, the police decided to send a team back to Antoinette's apartment. Now, the case wasn't just seen as a domestic dispute, it was treated as a suspected intentional crime. The full investigation phase started. The police asked for medical reports to confirm what caused her injuries. Early findings showed these injuries couldn't have come from just an accidental fight. From how severe and specific the injuries were, it was clear Ashley had been beaten multiple blows hitting vital organs. She didn't have any defensive wounds, which basically means she probably didn't resist or couldn't defend herself.
I will murder you. I will murder you. I will murder you. I will murder you. I will murder you.
Using the doctor's reports, initial forensic protocols, and camera footage from the complex, the police officially opened a criminal case. Once they got confirmation of Ashley's death, officers returned to the residential complex. Antoinette and Janine were detained and taken to the station. They were separated, and the questioning began. Antoinette answered calmly but didn't say much. She avoided eye contact, kept her answers short, and insisted Ashley came to her place, started the fight, and was the first to throw blows. She never mentioned the messages with Ashley or that she set up the meeting. Antoinette kept saying she acted in self-defense. When the investigators pointed out that her story didn't line up with the hospital reports, she didn't react. After a few more questions, she refused to talk without a lawyer.
I will say that, I don't go out looking to harm anybody. That's not my intention. I do feel, very remorseful about.
Janine, on the other hand, acted totally different. She was confident, relaxed, and almost immediately started telling her side. She didn't seem worried at all, smiled, even joked sometimes. Her story felt more like a casual conversation than an interrogation.
Just go through basically, since I wasn't there, and I'm playing catch up basically. So what happened?
So like, let me start to where it leaded.
The investigators decided not to interrupt her, and honestly, that worked. Janine went through everything in detail, how Daniel told her about the affair, how she told Antoinette right away, how they came up with the plan to text Ashley pretending to be Daniel, and how they set up the meeting. She talked calmly about who suggested they film the whole thing, how she and Antoinette hid while Ashley walked to the spot. Janine also admitted she took part in the beating, that she hit Ashley several times because Antoinette told her to help out. She kept saying she thought it was kinda interesting at the time and didn't think about what would happen next. All of this was recorded in the official report. This gave the police grounds to get a search warrant. From then on, the investigators knew for sure Antoinette and Janine had purposely lured Ashley to beat her. Janine's lack of remorse and her calm way of telling it just made it clear this was planned. After the interrogations, the police searched the place and seized all their phones, including Janine's Bose's. On her phone, they found the full video of the attack. The footage confirmed Ashley didn't resist at all, and the blows were deliberate and systematic. The recording included mocking, threats, and comments that showed this was a premeditated assault.
Wanna get up?
Get off me.
Get off my hair, I'ma you up.
Let me go then. Get off me.
Say hi to Daniel.
Get off me.
Say hi to Daniel.
Started standing over her, and she asked Miss Janine Gonzalez, "Do you want any of this?" Which Miss Gonzalez replied, "I do." And she came and kicked her about 3 times.
So, in Daniel's phone, they found the messages where Antoinette had posed as him to set up the meeting. That basically became direct evidence that Ashley was lured under false pretenses. Both arrests happened as part of the ongoing investigation. The suspects were informed of their rights and told just how serious the charges were, and again, it was clear how different their reactions were. Antoinette didn't say a word. Janine, on the other hand, acted like none of it fazed her. The arrests themselves went down quietly, no resistance or anything, but the officers made sure everything stayed under control. Daniel only found out later. At the time, he was at work. The police showed up at the store and told him that Ashley had died and that Antoinette and Janine were in custody. Daniel's reaction was rough. He had no idea what Antoinette was planning. He didn't know anyone had used his phone, and he never imagined things would end like this. Afterward, Daniel was brought in to give an official statement. He said he never gave his phone to anyone and didn't know about any meeting being arranged.
Well, yeah, we got a call from the hospital a little while ago, and she actually passed away from...
Bro, stop playing with me,
No,
please.
seriously.
Please stop playing with me.
Sure.
Please stop playing
Sit down,
with me.
sit down,
Please
sit down,
stop
sit down,
playing
sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down.
Please stop playing with me.
Shh, breathe.
What he said matched everything the investigators had already confirmed, so the police didn't have any reason to think he was involved. Daniel said he was fully willing to help with the investigation. The police actually considered having him testify in court since it was his identity that was used to lure Ashley, even though he had no knowledge of it.
Let me talk to everybody in the audience. Somebody out there is going to be unhappy. I don't know what the verdict is.
In the end, both Antoinette and Janine were found guilty of murder and robbery. They were each sentenced to 20 years in prison. Janine was still 17 when it happened, but the court ruled that she'd be tried as an adult. If she follows the rules and doesn't violate the terms of her sentence, she could be released when she's around 37. The fallout from this whole thing was devastating. Ashley's son lost his mother. Even though Julian and Ashley hadn't been a couple for a while, he'd always been involved in their son's life. Now he took on full responsibility, doing what he could to give his kid some sense of safety and stability after losing her. Antoinette and Daniel had 2 kids of their own. After Antoinette's arrest, and once Daniel was officially cleared, he continued raising them alone. And despite everything that had happened, and the grief around Ashley's death, he didn't step back from his role as a father. This tragedy hit both families hard. Ashley's son no longer had a mother, and Antoinette and Daniel's kids lost theirs too. It all started with jealousy and suspicion and ended in death, prison, and 2 families trying to piece things back together. The kids had nothing to do with any of it. But now they'll carry this with them for the rest of their lives, whether they understand it fully or not.